Well, welcome to 11th. I'm Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Training. This is my twice weekly webcast, 11th. It's show 422. It is Monday, the 22nd of April, so we are a day late with today's show. But it'll be a reasonably quick one, and the news we have for you today. Some of it's quite alarming. An eBay bike swap went wrong when the person collecting the bike in exchange for his own was threatened by a knife, and he had his bike stolen. Off-road riders in Kent are apparently polluting drinking water. Wales is to change their guidance on their 20-mile-per-hour blanket speed limits. And a new long-distance record has been set on a Vespa 50, some 45 years after the machine was used for a previous long-distance record attempt, which is fairly remarkable. Same rider too. A brand new day out in Shropshire is set to celebrate the county's and country's bike manufacturing excellence. Morbidelli, a classic Italian name, has been reborn, and Zero are rolling out an adapter which will allow you to plug your bike into a Tesla charging point, but at the moment I think that's only for the USA. And then finally we'll have a look at a puzzling question. We'll come back to that Welsh 20-mile-per-hour limit debate, and we'll ask why it is that speed limits aren't being set logically anymore. So make yourselves a brew, settle yourselves down for the next 30 minutes or so while we come back with all those stories. Right, Terry's looked in. Good morning. Nice to see you, Terry. Now, okay, so let's start with the point. You may have been wondering why I'm a day late. Well, the simple answer to this is that Skills on Saturday went missing too, and so did 11's on Sunday. And the reason is I was down at another funeral, this time in Devon, and I was a day late back. Now, I won't lie to you, Graham always enjoyed a pint or three with a whiskey or two to wash the whole lot down, and we gave him a pretty good send-off, I think, on Friday afternoon after the funeral at lunchtime, and we actually drank the pub out of beer that evening. So a successful evening for Graham, I think. Was certainly saw him off, I think, the way that he would have enjoyed being seen off. Anyway, there were consequences, of course, to this. Basically, I was still fast asleep on when I should have been getting up and writing the Saturday post, which I hadn't had time to write on the Friday. Excuse me, while I'll just fiddle with the headset now and get it comfortable. And when it came to the Sunday morning, or the Saturday morning, which was when we were supposed to be driving back from Devon, I was frankly in no fit state to drive at Saturday lunchtime. So we delayed our departure for a day, and we left Devon a day late yesterday morning. So I was just about on the road when 11's were due to go out, and we got back to London about 4 p.m. yesterday. So that's my friend Graham, and that's why we're a day late today. Anyway, on with the weather. Now, the weather for bikers, let me just get the picture up. I like to have the little pictures. There we go. That should be up on screen any second. Yes, there we are. So, weather for bikers. It's a bit of a grey start here in London. And apparently most of the south is going to see cloudy skies. And there will be patches of rain around as well, mostly light. North will be drier. It will start cloudy, but there should be some sun breaking through. Tonight the skies should clear across much of the country, but it will still be cloudy down here in the southeast with some light rain. Tomorrow, sunnier for the north and west, rather cloudy in the south and east, with patchy rain in the far southeast, clinging on across the southeast of London. And it's said to be less mild, turning breezy with northerly winds. So not too wonderful a pair of days for going out riding your motorcycle. Right, and so on with the news. Right, first story, as I said, a fairly alarming one. Moments after swapping his own machine for a KTM XF250 in a car park in Coleshill in Warwickshire. A man was confronted by a knife-wielding thief who claimed the bike was his brother's and then rode away on it. Now, the 22-year-old victim had travelled in a rented van from Wales to make the eBay deal, and after the trader had helped him load the bike into the van, the masked man approached them and demanded the bike, threatening to stab them. The victim and his friends were taking videos of the new machine when they were confronted by this masked assailant, so there is a video sort of footage of what happened. Now, they said that they confronted the robber but backed down as they feared for their safety. I didn't physically see the knife, but he kept reaching in his pocket and the bike was strapped in. When I turned around, it wasn't, so I don't know whether he cut the strap, said the owner, or the very short-term owner of the bike. The bike was duly ridden off. It was followed by a dark blue Honda Civic. Now, this incident took place on Thursday, April the 4th. Warwickshire Police said there's no update on the incident at this time. Previously issued an appeal for information, which they urged anyone with dashcam, CCTV, video or doorbell footage to get in touch. Well, I imagine a lot of that is fairly far from easy to find when the deal was done, because it was in a car park apparently. Right, okay. South East Water, they have said that mud from trails being created by motorcyclists and mountain bikers on its land near Pembury in Kent are unwittingly polluting drinking water and damaging its machinery. Now, the polluted water is said to be finding its way into a nearby reservoir, and the company is now appealing for riders of both types of two-wheeler to stay away from the private land. Biodiversity manager Richard Dyer said the disruption caused by the trail bikers is having an impact on the fragile woodland ecosystem by damaging ground flora and impacting protected species such as dormice and nested birds. It's also affecting raw water quality by leaving the ground bare, allowing rain to wash soil particles and other contaminants off into the local springs and streams. The potential for an oil or fuel spill from a motorbike contaminating the springs and streams is particularly worrying. The water in the reservoir is natural spring water, so it's heartbreaking that it could be polluted in such a way. Couple of points there. Well, first of all, you're not going to wash mud into a spring. You will wash it into a stream, but the whole point of a spring is that the water seeps down through the soil and comes out fairly clean because it's coming through chalk, so it's filtered. So yeah, the mud could get into the spring water, but not actually into a spring. So that's nonsensical. However, oil or petrol could end up polluting the groundwater, and it has happened. I seem to remember around Biggin Hill, they started detecting benzene in water in about 1980, I think it was. I seem to remember it was roughly the time I was doing one of my degrees. And they traced that eventually. They traced it back to the World War II airfield and the fact they used this stuff to wash engine parts. Anyway, the second thing is I checked the press release from South East Water. I went beyond the news story. And what's not entirely clear is whether or not there is a right of access to this supposed trail that's at the root of the problem. I've had a look at the byway map, which is www.bywaymap.com. Nice, easy URL to remember. And that lists road legal byways in the UK. And I cannot see one near these reservoirs, which South East Water owns. So my guess is that the bikes are being ridden on footpaths. Now, South East Water actually owns or manages 33 sites of special scientific interest, a national nature reserve, 2 local nature reserves, and numerous areas of outstanding natural beauty. So it's important to try and maintain these things. So yeah, we shouldn't really be riding in areas like that. Now, here's a story which I will be coming back to at the end of the show in my in-depth piece. And this is the news that just a day or so ago, barely 6 months after the introduction of the default 20 mile per hour speed limit in built-up areas, which I will remind you came with a proviso that higher limits could be set for routes where a 20 mile per hour limit was considered not appropriate. Wales's Transport Minister said the Welsh Government will correct, and I'll use that word correct, so that's what the quote was, its guidance. Now, this is all in response to a petition where 500,000 people were against the lower speed limit. Now, Minister Ken Skates, he said that in many areas, quote, routes that shouldn't have been included were, and he now says he wants decisions on the local speed limit to be left to local communities rather than being imposed on them. And he said there's generally universal support for 20 miles per hour limits being targeted where there are schools and hospitals as well as in built up areas like housing estates. But that, again, many routes that shouldn't have been included were. So I'll come back to that and have a look when we discuss how these speed limits are being set. Now, speed limit wasn't really probably something that bothered Valerio Boni too much back in March when he topped his previous best long-distance record by riding a fairly astounding 1,233 kilometres in 24 hours. That's 766 miles. Now, you may not think that sounds like an awful lot in 24 hours, but he did it on a 50cc Vespa. Now, it's not his first long-distance ride on this particular machine. He previously clocked 940 non-stop kilometres, 584 miles, on this Vespa 50 Special at the Pirelli track in Visola Ticino. That was 45 years ago, though. So, yes, you heard that right. It was the same machine, same rider, 45 years apart. But the odd thing was, it seems that the first record attempt back in 1979 never actually made it into the Guinness World Records because he actually forgot to send in the homologation documentation. So that left the official world record to be set in 2005 by an Australian, Mark Brown, even though Mark Brown only covered 928 kilometres. So that was 12 kilometres less than Boni managed. Boni was quoted as saying the only solution was to attempt the record again. I was 20 years old then, I'm now 64. And he set it on a historic banked circuit, one I've never heard of, Sitges Tarahumar. It's in Catalonia in Spain. It opened in 1923, so not a bad job really for a Vespa 50 built in 1979. And Boni said, I saw the Tarahumar track for the first time in 2018 and was fascinated. The concrete slabs at the bottom are very uneven, but given the reduced speed, I considered taking the risk. Now, unfortunately, despite on-the-move refueling, there's a video of that actually. If you go looking for it, you'll find somebody has put it up. He's riding along on his bike, refilling the tank from a gravity-fed jerry can that somebody riding alongside him is holding. So sort of in-flight refueling, if you like. But he did unfortunately fail to set the record for the longest non-stop ride despite this technique, because he had to sort out an eye irritation caused by dust that he was kicking up on this elderly circuit. So, okay, don't forget, if you like these podcasts, please support them. Can I just remind you to do the usual thing? Only takes a moment of your time. Subscribe, like, follow the channel. That all helps other people discover my podcasts, discover my short videos as well. And don't forget to tell people about 11s too. Share the link to Riding Buddies. I'm sure they'll find something interesting. Now, if you're looking for a date for your diary, here's one to pop in. It's an array of what's got historic motorcycles and bicycles, which are celebrating the local industrial heritage of the Black Country. Excuse me. The Midlands Motorcycle and Cycle Heritage Day will be held in the town of Shifnal on June the 15th. And in case you're wondering where that is, it's about 4 miles east of Telford on the A464 on the way down to Wolverhampton. Now, organiser David Morris, he's the director of the Italian Automoto Club, explained that Wolverhampton was one of the original centres of the UK motorcycle and bicycle industry. And he said, Shifnal's proximity to Wolverhampton will be played out in this brand new day, which will celebrate the county's manufacturing influence, through motorcycle and cycle heritage. We hope that this new event will draw in enthusiasts from across the country who will proudly display their historic machines. It should be a fantastic day. Roger Cox, he's the mayor of Shifnal. He was delighted that the town was hosting the unique attraction. He said, "We think this is the first event of its kind in the UK and we expect it to attract hundreds of visitors. The town centre will be closed off and filled. Be a free day out for families to come and learn something about these motorcycles." So there you go, that's a date for your diary. I've just realised I haven't told you what the date is, have I? That's because I forgot to. Oh yes, there it is, June the 15th. June the 15th, I have got it there in the story. Okay, now something else I've previously commented on is the ridiculous situation that's emerging with the electric cars and bikes. Now, unlike petrol and diesel engines, where you simply rock up to a pump, select the right nozzle from the pump and then pour in the correct fuel, it's a problem that not all EV charging points are compatible with all EVs because they use different connectors. As one article put it, in most cases you'll know your cable is not compatible with the charging point as it simply won't fit. But what it means is, of course, that even though the charging system, the sort of the electric current flowing through the charging point might be suitable for your car, not all are, of course, because there are high, medium and low charging rate points. It means that you can't plug your car in even if you find an empty point if the charger doesn't fit. And of course, since electric motorcycles need recharging more often than most other electric vehicles, not being able to use an empty charger because it's the wrong sort is going to be a real pain in the neck. Yesterday, we stopped at the services Lee Delaware on the M4 for a coffee on the way back from Devon, and I noticed, I had a good look, there were a total of 3 chargers in the car park on the London-bound carriageway. 3 chargers, 1 slow, 2 medium, and not surprisingly, they were all occupied, and there was a queue sort of around the corner of drivers waiting to get into these charging points. So it's good to see that Zero Motorcycles have recognised this, and now they offer the Tesla Mini Tap. And this basically is a compact adapter which plugs into your existing charging point on the bike and allows you to access the 40,000 extra charging options via Tesla's level 2 destination chargers. Now, right now, this is available in the US, in North America, but I guess that it's probably likely to come to the UK. But it cannot be used with the Tesla Supercharger network, but it should do quite a lot to help out with range anxiety. We're excited about what the Tesla Tap Mini means not only to the Zero Motorcycles community but also for the continued progress of EV motorcycles within the broader market. This adapter unlocks tens of thousands of new charging opportunities for electric motorcycle riders and provides our customers with an added peace of mind to be able to rely on charging infrastructure when it's needed on their electric motorcycle adventures. That was Brian Wisman. He's the Senior VP of Product Development at Zero over in the US. But you kind of have to wonder, don't you, why on earth there wasn't a standard sort of plug-in connector. I mean, imagine that, you know, depending on who built your house, they chose their own style of electrical connector. So rather than the standard 3-pin plug that we had a mix of sort of US style and French style all in the same house, because that's basically what the problem is. Just in case you're wondering, by the way, the connector features 2 padlock slots so that you can secure the adapter both to your bike and to the Tesla connector at the other end. So basically stop somebody unplugging your bike and plugging their car in, because I have heard of that happening. Bad news is, right now though, the Tesla Tap Mini, it can only be used by Zero models that have a J1772 charging inlet, which basically means only the high-powered models, I think what they're called the SRs, and the more recent sort of the lower powered models. So it doesn't backwardly fit older ones. Right, Terry's got a point to make on the speed limits. He says the NZTA in New Zealand spent 2 years reducing many urban and suburban speed limits from 50 as kph, of course, down to 40 or even 30. 30 kph equals about 20 miles per hour. And following on from that, some state highways have seen speed limit reductions from 100 kph down to 90 or 80 kph, 80 kph being 50 miles per hour. The latter move became political, with our conservative political parties sensing cheap votes were there for the taking by promising to overrule the NZTA and return the rural highway limits to what they are. And that is actually a very good point. It becomes a political football. Yes, and that's something I'll come on to at the end of the show. Right, okay, so back in January, I reported on a new machine from an unfamiliar Italian brand, MBP, or Moto Bologna Passione, to give them their full name. I mentioned at the time that Google failed to find a link to the company. The only link I could find was Indonesia, actually, for what appears to be their product range, but nothing in India. Italy. Now, I mentioned that MBP may sound Italian, but the company was actually founded by the Keeway Group, who, like Benelli, are part of the Qianjiang Motor Company. Now, the latest news is that MBP will now be known as Morbidelli MPP, presumably to trade on the rich heritage of what is actually a genuine Italian motorcycle brand. Now, Morbidelli, you may not have heard of them if you are not a follower of MotoGP, or at least historically. They were a successful team in Grand Prix racing. They won 3 titles in the 125 class in 75, 76 and 77. They also got a win in 250s in 77. And then they went ahead to combine with Benelli to create the MBA Racer. A mix of Morbidelli and Benelli. I can't remember, Army or something was the other word in there. But anyway, it was basically a Morbidelli motorcycle. And they added 2 further 125cc World Championships in 78 and 1990. 1980, that should read. They ceased their racing activities in 1982, but in I get all my numbers muddled again. 1982, they ceased racing activities. 1994, they showcased an exotic, fully faired, shaft-driven 5-speed, 32-valve, liquid-cooled 847cc, 90-degree V8. Got there in the end. It was designed as a sort of sport touring motorcycle with a sort of big fairing, comfy seats and all that kind of stuff, but rather predictably it was far too expensive ever to be put in production. So there are a couple of pre-production models floating around in museums. I know one is in the Barber Motorsports Park Museum in the US. Now, late in 2022, the MBP name and their logos were trademarked to a Hong Kong-based company called Power Link Technology, and they simultaneously applied for the rights to the names and logos for Morbidelli MBP and Morbidelli MBP Pesaro. Now, PowerLink turns out to have links to QJ Motor, but the good news is, I suppose, that the new design centre as well as an R&D facility are going to be built in Italy to explore new technologies and materials, improve the design, performance, and to bring Italian motorcycle excellence to the world in the name of heritage and the passion by Giancarlo Morbidelli, the original founder. Right, okay, so comment, this is on the the electric charging point. He said aircraft had all this sorted under NATO. The automotive industry follows the madness of the tech giants. Yes, the incompatible charging sockets, whether you've got something that runs off a USB or whether you've got an Apple style charging point. So, all right. So, as I said, a fairly short show today. So, I'm already arrived at the in-depth feature, and this is to talk about the speed limits and to ask why they're not set logically anymore. So, just to remind you, Minister Ken Bates, he said that routes that shouldn't have been included in this blanket 20 rollout were, and now he says that he wants decisions on speed limits to be left to local communities rather than being imposed on them. He said again, if you recall, that there's a general acceptance for 20s past schools and hospitals, as well as in housing estates, but many routes that should have been shouldn't have been included were swept up in the blanket 20. Now, frankly, I'm baffled when he says that the quote, the guidance has to be corrected, and that he says also that the proposed amendments, quote, will enable councils to revert back those routes that were not appropriate. Now, my understanding of this is that there was always this provision for locals to raise the limit back to 30, even to 40 if it was sort of a major road through a built-up area where segregated pedestrian walkways and things existed. So I don't understand what it is that needs clarifying. Also, it seems to me that it was entirely easy to revert these speed limits if needed. What it did was it brought a consistency to the speed limits. You default to 20. If you don't see a speed limit sign, you just drive at 20, and if it turns out you're too slow, so what? But you'll see the problem of the alternative approach in just a moment. But now, as he says, the limits will have to be set dependent on what people want. And this basically leads to the same crazy situation we have in England now, where adjacent villages on the same road often have different speed limits, thanks entirely to this what the locals want policy rather than any coherent road safety decisions. So why do we actually have this mishmash of limits? Well, it's thanks to guidance which was published back in January 2013, which was said, quote, to help local authorities across England set speed limits. The then Road Safety Minister, Stephen Hammond at the time, he said, we want to see safe roads which meet the needs of everyone, so it's vital that councils have clear and consistent guidance to help them set appropriate speed limits on their roads. Local councils should set speed limits based on their local knowledge and on the views of the community. That is why we've launched an online toolkit alongside our new guidance to help councils make the best decisions for their local areas. So there you go. The aim was clear: to help councils implement more consistent limits on local roads. How are they going to do it? They're going to be allowed to pick and choose their own speed limits. So the result, utter confusion. The same basic proposals 12 or 11 or 12 years earlier than the Welsh seem to be falling into this same trap. So let's have a look at just how mad this can get. Now, let me show you this photograph first of all. There we go. This is up in northwest London, so not too far away from where I live. It's actually the road passing across the top of Hampstead Heath. And if you look into the distance, you will see the trees and things. That is the heath. And all this used to be a 30 limit not too long ago. But as you can see from the speed limit signs on both sides of the road there, it is now a 20. And if you look, I'll try and zoom in a little bit here, beyond the pedestrian crossing, you can see that not only is there a wide pavement barriered off on the to our right in this picture here, but also on the left there's an even wider combined cycle lane and footway. So this is a 20 limit. It's a nice wide road, it's pretty straight, and yet it's all decided that 20 is the appropriate speed limit. The other thing you'll notice is that they didn't actually bother to put new signs up to mark the 20 limit. They just used existing lamp posts, so you don't have them parallel with each other. They're sort of placed a bit at random. So does the speed limit match the road? Is it appropriate? Well, let's just say that I followed a marked up police car down this stretch not too long ago as it cruised down it at just under 30 miles per hour. So you can make your own decisions from that. So from the zebra crossing, we'll go to this point here where the zebra is, and we'll look the other way and see what we can see. So there we are. Now we are on the other side. We just sit literally on top of the zebra crossing here. We're looking the other way, and you can see the two signs giving you the new speed limit. And again, you'll notice that they're on those posts, which are staggered, not opposite each other. And what do you notice? Well, first of all, the footpath on the left-hand side disappears as it goes past those little tents. And you'll notice that there's no cycleway on the other side of the road either. And if we zoom in, it's a little bit difficult to see from here, but you'll notice that the road ahead disappears over a bit of a crest and round a corner, and it just looks a little bit on the narrow side up here. So what's it really like? And here we have my third picture, which is lifted obviously from Google Maps, and you'll see where that road disappears around the corner and over that little crest. This is what you are looking at. So the building on the left of the picture here is the famous Spaniards Inn, and the small square block on the right is actually a listed building. It's at the old toll house. So this was the toll gate. This is why the road is narrowed here. So what happens? Just as the road narrows down to a single lane, it forces cyclists to compete for space with buses and all the other traffic that goes through this single lane stretch. We have a no pavement on this side of the road either on the left, so either pedestrians are going to cross the road on a really busy pinch point, or they have to sort of walk around the edge of the building and hope they don't get run down. But it's all in a 30 limit. Now, why has this happened? Why have we got the 20 limit on the easy bit of road behind us? Why have we got a 30 limit through the complex, tricky bit where we all have to negotiate for space? Well, it's very simple. It was left to local councils to set their speed limit. We're moving from Camden Council, which has a policy of sticking 20s on everything, to Barnet, which has a rather more sensible, in my opinion, policies of only dropping speed limits where it is really important. And you know, it even gets worse. If that situation wasn't nonsensical enough, we go just a few yards up the road and we find that, in fact, the speed limit reverts to 20 because you're back into Camden Council if you go straight on. But if you turn left into another residential road, Bishop's Avenue, if you London as you may know it, it's the one where all the footballers' wives live, and every now and again, about every 5 minutes they demolish a house and build a new one. That's actually a 40-mile-per-hour road, yet it's through a middle of a residential area. So confused, I'm sure you are. I certainly am. Now, how is anyone supposed to know what the speed limits are unless they spot these signs? There's certainly no logic to the speed limit. And frankly, this is why, and I know this will upset some people who don't like to be told what to do by government, I'd rather have the blanket 20 policy through any built up area, any residential area, rather than the sort of random limits policy we have now. Because as I said, it's almost impossible to predict what the speed limit is from the old streetlights, no streetlights guidance. I'm sure you remember that from the Highway Code. If the streetlights are placed, I think it's 100 metres or less apart, you assume 30 miles per hour. Now that is no longer relevant guidance. You actually have to look for the street signs, and the trouble is the repeaters are often way too far apart. I think there's a very good case going back to the old 85th percentile system of setting speed limits, and I'll explain that next week. And finally, hopefully, I did not trip a 20-mile-per-hour speed camera last week. I drove into a village to discover that it had a new 20-mile-per-hour limit in force. But just to confuse me, the old 30-mile-per-hour limit sign is still there, but it's now 100 meters or so before you get to the 20. So I admit it, I simply did not spot the second sign. It is there. There's also a roundel on the road. I just wasn't looking for them. I was looking elsewhere. There's a junction there. There's a pub on the corner with a blind entrance into a car park, and the road is fairly narrow and there's no pavement. So I wasn't looking for speed limit signs. And even more cunningly, there is no repeater placed before the camera, just in case you spot the camera and you think, oh, what's the speed limit? The one that you can see is after you've passed the camera. So it's telling you basically it was too late to brake. So I'm really not very happy about that. I'll tell you if I get a ticket. Right, okay, so Terry's saying that the interoperability goes deeper into the structural differences between individual cells. I'm not enough of an expert to know that, but clearly there are charges which are set at different charging levels. So yes, you do have to know what charging regime your car takes. But then I'd say it's a bit like the fact that you can't put a diesel pump into an unleaded car these days. They've just made the nozzle slightly narrower, and the diesel pump won't fit. At least it doesn't in the UK. So I agree what you're saying. I think the battery packs are mostly built by third-party suppliers, so I suspect that the technology is now pretty standardized for that. I'll try and find out, and maybe that will be an article at some point. Aaron's just said something about speed limits. He says yes, it should be simple. Lots of pedestrians 30, lots of buildings 50, a few buildings 70, rural 100. I think that's keeping it simple, isn't it? And then people have got a fighting chance of actually knowing what they're supposed to do. I will come back to this topic next time out when I discuss the 85th percentile speed limit theory, and also how you change a road to accommodate the need for lower limits. It's not as simple as just putting a sign up and putting a camera up. And Sue's looked in. Good morning to you, Sue. She says she was on time yesterday. Yeah, sorry about that. You wind back to the beginning of the show and you'll see why I was absent without leave yesterday. Right, that is it for today. Thank you very much once more for looking in. I hope you have enjoyed the show. I do have one shout out, of course. Yes, it's the coffee supporters and subscribers. We have Damo, Clive, Lee, Paul, Brian, Christine, Claire, and Anonymous. Thank you all for your support. Don't forget, all you have to do to get on the list is to pop up your own support for me, and you will get your name in lights here. And if you do want to become a supporter or subscriber having watched this show, just follow the QR code there. That will take you to the coffee page. Couldn't be simpler, could it? And I'll just remind you that, of course, as a supporter, you open up a month's access to the Survival Skills Archive. There are over 1,000 better biking articles already up there, and I'm still putting more up all the time. And I certainly challenge you to read them all in that time. So the Survival Skills Archive, it has to be the biggest resource for better biking information on the web. So why not subscribe and make it a regular donation? Right, that is it for today. Thank you very much indeed for watching. I'll be back on Wednesday, back at the regular spot of 11 a.m. and if you are out there on the bike today, make sure you stay shiny side up.